Welcome to today's webinar, Redefining Hybrid Cloud with Cloud-First Networking Portfolio. My name is Greg Holzrichter, CMO at Big Switch, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Joining me on the panel are Doug Murray, CEO and co-founder, Kyle Forrester. As we go through the presentation, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A box on your webinar dashboard. If you're watching this video in a rebroadcast, or if you have questions on an upcoming webinar topic that you'd like to have our panelists address, please email us at info@bigswitch.com. We've also provided you with handouts for today's session, which we encourage you to download on the Handouts tab of your dashboard. If you think about enterprise IT, they've tasted the sweet simplicity of public cloud, rapid SLAs, agility, flexible scalability, and expectations for on-prem private cloud operations have fundamentally shifted. Today, we're going to introduce you to Cloud-First Networking, a completely reimagined networking experience. CFN brings virtual private cloud, VPCs, a simplified logical network construct very popular in public clouds, such as AWS VPC, Azure VNet, and Google Cloud Platform VPCs. And we're bringing those to hybrid clouds and private clouds with a single console for managing hybrid cloud networks. You get the simplicity of a public cloud VPC on-prem. It's a really revolutionary way of thinking about networking that we want to take you through today. Cloud-First Networking offers enterprise VPCs and centralized management for consistency, simplicity, and agility across hybrid cloud environments. We have a very full agenda for today's webinar, so let's get started. It's my pleasure now to introduce Doug Murray, CEO of Big Switch Networks.
Thanks, Greg, and welcome everybody to the Cloud-First Networking launch. I'm really excited about the innovations that we're announcing here this week. Buckle up, we've got a full agenda today. I've had the privilege of being the CEO of Big Switch for nearly 5 years at this point. And when I look back 4 years ago to the week, we relaunched the company. We started the process of rebranding our initial product, Big Tap, into what became Big Monitoring Fabric. And we very importantly that week announced Big Cloud Fabric, our first true switching offering in the data center. That launch itself really set the foundation that became Big Switch over the 3 or 4 years that followed. And I think the launch this week, the products and the innovations that we're announcing are just as fundamental today as they were 4 years ago. So today is a major, major launch for the company in terms of where we're going to take the direction and where we believe the industry is headed. In preparing for the webinar, I had the opportunity to spend time with the team reflecting a little bit in terms of the past. And when you look at the past, it really provides some perspective in terms of innovation and thought leadership. I look at today as a really important moment in the industry. I started my career at AT&T in the 90s, and that was the time where we were looking at things like ATM and frame relay, and this very cool thing was starting to happen called Ethernet. And as that journey started to evolve, there are certain milestones on that journey that became very important. They became fundamental in terms of how the industry evolved. I look back at Cisco routing in the days of, early days and with IPv4, Cisco switching with VLANs, Cisco and the Cat6K really started to have that adoption become incredibly scalable. Juniper with routing and MPLS and BGP, and the introduction of the M40. I look at Arista with things such as the Leaf and the Spine, the Spline, and really going aggressively after the 10 gig transition. I look at VMware with NSX, VXLAN overlays, and microsegmentation. I would argue that today represents the next big thing for networking, and it's something that I'm incredibly proud and excited about. Let's cut to the chase. So what are we announcing this week? Let's start with the bookends. So the first thing very exciting for us is of on-prem VPC. So we're taking the concept of a VPC, which we'll get into exactly what that means if you're not familiar with the concept. We're taking the concept of a VPC, which is something that's very comfortable to people that operate in public clouds, and we're bringing that on-prem. The reason why this is so innovative is because if you look at the rest of the industry in terms of networking, their view of the world is you take how you operate switching and routing. How you take switching and you take command line interface, you wrap it up in a VM and ship it off to a cloud. We're doing, just to be clear, we're doing the exact opposite of that. We're taking the concept of how you operate in the cloud, and we're bringing that on-prem so that there's a seamless experience as people move into the hybrid context. The other bookend, which is incredibly important for us, is a product called Multi-Cloud Director, which we're announcing, and it will ship later this year. Multi-Cloud Director is very, very important, not only for people that are moving to cloud, but even for folks who aren't moving to cloud. For Big Switch customers who have multiple instances of Big Cloud Fabric or multiple instances of Big Monitoring Fabric, it gives them the ability to manage all of that now from a common and single pane of glass. You can envision that as things progress over the months and years ahead, that as people start to deploy rapid workloads across what they're doing in Azure, what they're doing in Google Cloud, what they're doing in Amazon Web Services, they'll be able to manage all of that from a networking point of view from one console, which is Multi-Cloud Director. So this is something that we believe is game-changing for the company and indeed the industry. This is then supported by a series of other things. I'll call it the supporting cast, which are equally important to the Cloud-First portfolio. We introduced here last quarter On-Prem VPC Flow Analytics. So it's for BMF Enterprise Cloud, which we do on-prem. That's available today. People are already buying that technology. We announced a few months ago BMF Public Cloud. That is in final beta and will be shipping here in this quarter. And then lastly, in Q4, we will go to beta for Big Cloud Fabric in public cloud, starting with AWS. So again, a lot of incredible innovation. I'm really proud of the team and what's been put together. Kyle will detail all of this in much more intimate detail as we work through the presentation here. Now, why are we so excited? So yesterday we hosted a series of delegates from Network Field Day for NFD 18, and I believe it was our 7th or 8th NFD that we participated in. And for me, this is actually the most exciting because it was one where we saw people using the technology real time in the room, and really from a simplicity perspective, them looking at this and saying, wow, this is just materially different than the way people think about networking. I invite people who didn't have the opportunity to see NFD real time to actually catch the replay. It should be live either tomorrow or Monday. So I invite you to take the opportunity. It's a wonderful thing because it's not like it's a vision of the future and some vaporware that someone in the industry is putting out there. It's real product and technology that's available to either demo or to use today. And that's something that at Big Switch here, we're very, very excited about. Now, I know many of you on the webcast are new to Big Switch, and a lot of you are quite familiar and have been with us on the journey. But for those who are new to the company, just a quick backdrop in terms of who we are and what we do. So from the beginning, the company has been fixated on one thing, which is disrupting the status quo of networking. That's something that will never change. As a company, we are the market leader in network operating systems for white box and bright box switches. And we also invest heavily in controller architecture and application and appliance nodes themselves. The premise is actually quite simple, which is you want everybody to manage all of their switching infrastructure logically as one big switch. Today, we have hundreds of customers that are in production with Big Monitoring Fabric as well as Big Cloud Fabric. We tend to focus on government as well as Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000. And today, we have 20% of the Fortune 100 as customers. We have over 200 employees, with the lion's share of them being here in Silicon Valley, specifically in Santa Clara in our offices here. And we partner closely with companies like Dell, HP, Nutanix, and many others. Dell is our largest customer today, and Dell has played a very important part on our journey, as they were the first of the incumbent vendors to provide what's called a bright box or disaggregated offering in the market. And that's something that has gone up to not only Tom Burns, who runs the networking division, but Michael Dell personally, who has been involved with us as we look at the transformation. If you look at our growth, the company is growing at about 80 to 100% a year. So we're moving very quickly. We see a lot of people in the market that are really trying to embrace and adopt the technology. And you see some of the great logos there. One of the things that gets me really excited in terms of the adoption here is if you're new to the company, don't worry, you're not the first to cross the chasm. We have many in your respective industry that have used the technology and are doing so at scale. I wanted to briefly thank our customers as well as our partners for being part of the journey with us. And if you're not a customer yet, I invite you to roll up your sleeves, get on BSN Labs, or get a POC with one of our killer SEs. Our win rate, once people use and try the technology, is over 90%. So you won't be disappointed, so give it a shot. Before I turn it over to Kyle, the last thing I just wanted to highlight is with respect to hybrid cloud. I'm not going to go on and extol the virtues of how cloud is the future and cloud is on its way. It's crystal clear if you look at the industry, the trends, the discussions we have with customers, that it's irrefutable, cloud is the future. Kyle and I respectively spent a lot of time with CIOs. We spent a lot of time with end users down at the networking layer. And what's clear is they're struggling with the shift to cloud, and whether it's hybrid or multi-cloud. They're challenged by things around multi-tenancy. They're challenged about security. They're worried about governance and compliance. And they're really worried because the teams that they have that are existing don't really have cloud experience. We believe that our launch today is something that becomes incredibly fundamental for a networking professional. It gets them a seat at the table, and it gets them to participate in the journey to cloud. So we think it's powerful not only for the CIOs, but very much for the end users as they start to graduate from traditional command line interface and being CCIEs to being hybrid cloud aware. It's clear, it's crystal clear if you look at the industry, the trends, the discussions we have with customers that it's irrefutable, cloud is the future. So with that, it's my privilege to turn the call over to our founder, Kyle Forster.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate the opportunity to talk over here about our cloud-first portfolio. This is an area where we've been working very, very hard here within the four walls of Big Switch for over a year now. And the public unveiling is a proud moment for all of us. A little over a year ago now, a number of us from the team started talking to our users about how they were using Amazon and Google and Azure, how they were organizing internally around that use. And what we found was what we called the siloed hybrid cloud model. Not across all of our users, but across the majority, there were two separate teams. Now, nobody on the networking side that we talked to thought that was going to be the end goal. But up until now, there was only really one path available, and we disparagingly call it the V-hardware path. And I think that name's been catching on. I remember, in fact, sitting in a presentation from one of the legacy networking vendors, talking about their cloud strategy, and I remember the presenter on stage said, "Hey, the thing that people really love about our cloud product is it's the same set of ports and it's the same CLI that you get on premise." And I remember thinking, I just don't think that's the right path. I just don't think that's the right thing for our industry, and I just don't think that putting hardware in the cloud and putting CLI on top of a VM is the right way to think about the problem. I don't think it's right for our profession. We chose a very different path. Instead of taking legacy on-prem technologies, a year ago we started looking at this path that we now call VPCs on-prem. Can we take the best that we're seeing in the cloud, the best practices, the best configuration objects, the best days in the life of a packet and days in the life of the organization models that support these technologies support, and can we bring those on-prem? We started calling that the cloud-first path. Because the cloud-first end goal is a slightly different state. I think all of us believe that there's an end goal of a seamless hybrid cloud network. But does that seamless hybrid cloud network look like box by box? Or does that seamless hybrid cloud network look more like what the cloud looks like today? And we're big believers in cloud first. Let me get into a bit more detail. We found in our conversations about half of the networking professionals we talk to are very familiar with VPCs, have already configured one or two. But about half consider this to be a new term. So I don't think that today is the right time to talk about the day in the life of a packet. We'll do that in technical white papers and some drill downs. I think to me the most important difference between a VPC and an on-prem, VRF and a VLAN is who has the username and password. The subtle difference, VPCs were an object model that's incredibly well thought through for delegated control. It's incredibly well thought through for an offer that as networking professionals we can offer to our application colleagues. A term that started sticking is VPCs are designed for as-a-service operations. It's a different way for us to think about networking. It's a way for us to think about what can we give from the networking side to our colleagues. When we unveiled this as a demo at Networking Field Day yesterday, I just wanted to show some of the reactions that we got from the audience. We, while live streaming to about 2,000 people with a team of 14 expert networkers in the room, we just gave the IP address of our office controller that was the network underneath the entire video stream. We gave everybody in the room a VPC, and we said, hey, try to break something. We're running a multi-tenant network with 80 racks downstairs, multiple major customer POCs going on, and this live stream to 2,000 people. here is a VPC. This is no maintenance window. This is on our live network. Go for it. I really invite you to look at the Twitter stream. This was an incredibly fun event, and I think all the delegates had a great time with it. But it proves, number one, that when we create a VPC, just like in the cloud, if we're running many VPCs in the cloud, if your organization creates a VPC, we don't expect anything to break. We can bring this exact experience on premise, step one. I think step two is us giving these VPCs to other people. Carl mentioned, look, this is the core of network as a service. It's something that we can offer. Greg has known us for a very, very long time, had this aha moment about halfway through the NFD presentation. This moment where he says, hey, this just turns, we've been trying to force fit legacy networking VLANs and VRFs onto the cloud. And this just turns all of that around. Let's take the best of what the cloud has to offer and bring it home. So I mentioned this cloud first path. Really, the end goal of a seamless hybrid cloud network when you go down this path is just a little bit different. Instead of putting box by box, VM by VMs everywhere, we're talking about putting VPCs everywhere. When we talk about analytics on-prem, look, I'm assuming everybody on the phone is most familiar with a couple of choke points, a handful of taps, and some sampled net flow. And on-prem, that's as good as we get. But in the cloud, you expect analytics across every flow, across every single VM, and you expect it to be stored for weeks and weeks and weeks. You expect complete VPC analytics, and you expect them everywhere. And we think that should be the bar. On-prem, you expect trouble tickets and maintenance windows. Hey, when you can get to something in the next maintenance window, that's considered impressive. But in the cloud, we're taking changes all the time, and you expect every change to be safe. The expectations are so different. I think on-prem, we've thought of tight control over the network, tight control over our networking organization. Yet in the cloud, the vision is just different. It's what can we offer and how can we collaborate? I think, interestingly for us, this is a chart. If you go to trends.google.com, you can see the Google search volume. This was an eye-opener. This was a big eye-opener for every single one of us at Big Switch that saw this. Over the next 12 months, these two lines will cross, and there will be more Google searches for AWS VPC, the primary config of cloud networking, than there will be for Cisco VLANs. We saw this chart. We asked ourselves, which side of this chart do we want to be on going forward? I mentioned this started a year ago, and I wanted to just take a moment on that. Jason is an architect at one of our larger customers. And this quote happened not in a meeting, nothing prepared. This quote happened outside in the hallway after the meeting. It was something that he kind of tossed off without even really thinking about it. I chose Big Switch on Dell because it was the closest we could get to Amazon networking on-prem. This quote went viral. It went viral in his organization, and then it went viral in our organization, and it was perspective changing. Up until this moment, I had always thought of us as an SDN company with a mission of building the best SDN that we possibly could, and this was a slightly different challenge, and it came at just the right time. As we look at the organization that he's in and the journey they're going through, and we look at his journey and what he's going through, in 2017, he chose Big Switch for switching and monitoring. 2018, 44 racks in production. 2019, what we have in proposal is 700 new Big Switch racks in proposal. But if we look at the legacy workloads from the data centers that they're collapsing and consolidating, a lot of the legacy workloads are going to move to Amazon. And as they do that, this is an organization that needs VPCs everywhere in order to create consistency at this scale. We looked at the path that he's on, that his organization is on, and it mirrored the path that we're on. When we talked about this with our other users, both large and small, we kept coming back to 3 pillars. We kept coming back to think differently as you go down this path and think about VPCs everywhere. When you think about rolling out a new application, think about rolling it out in a VPC, regardless of the location that application will eventually land in. We came back to this pillar of see everything. Don't accept partial analytics. Don't accept, hey, we get sampling. Think about analytics everywhere and think about complete analytics. This becomes not only useful for planning, it becomes incredibly useful for security purposes. This becomes incredibly useful for advanced troubleshooting purposes. The ramifications of complete analytics everywhere, the ramifications of 100% coverage instead of 80% coverage are incredible, and the behavior changes they create cannot be underestimated. And then the last is we think about consistency between on-prem sites and in-cloud regions. We have to think very, very cleverly about how do we keep site consistency when we want site consistency, yet expose the advantages of different parts of the network when needed. This is a very, very key design decision that we think will play out in a large way in the subtle ways as global networks are built out over the next 5 years. We started thinking about how do you manage it as one network. We want to report back on a meeting we had, gosh, this is 6 or 7 months ago, 2,500 person law firm, and I remember the network architect said, how could we expect to design, build, and expand these 3 very different environments over time? He was staring at expansion in their data center in San Jose, a new pod there. He was staring down a new data center in Denver, where he wanted the latest and greatest. And then he was staring down an expansion on Amazon East. With a small team, he was staring down possibly managing 3 completely different design efforts. And something about that doesn't feel like it's possible. The right answer became VPCs everywhere. Hey, just think about wrapping new applications in VPCs. What's it going to take for part of the San Jose environment to support VPCs? What's it going to take for Denver to support VPCs? What's it going to take for AWS US East to support VPCs? And how can you manage that? And this was a very clean and logical answer with a small team. How could we create a consistent environment on-prem and in cloud and across data centers? I want to mention a conversation that we had with the director of infrastructure for a Fortune 500 manufacturer. Even at his team's scale, a massive, massive scale, on-prem is very, his operations tool chain and team is very, very dependent on packet brokers and on NPM tools at scale. But in the cloud, the technology stack that's gotten built up is based on VPC flow logs, S3 buckets, and then a tool chain built on top of Elasticsearch. He immediately mentioned, hey, I can barely keep one operations team fully staffed, and because of the technology stacks that I'm looking at, I suddenly need to staff 2 parallel ops teams. Even at Fortune 500 scale, this is not a tenable problem. It became the design challenge to us to say, hey, how can we create flow analytics and packet analytics that are consistent on-prem and in cloud? In cloud is very advanced on flow analytics. How could we bring that on-prem? We did that with the analytics node. On-prem is very advanced in packet capture and packet analytics. How could we bring that in the cloud? I'm so proud about the announcements we're making today on this direction. And last, I was talking with a network engineer at a sort of large consumer website company. And he said, look, across the multiple data centers that we have, across the multiple AWS and soon Azure regions that we operate, there are times when I need to make site-specific changes. But then there are times when I need to make region-specific changes and manage to consistency across the region. And then there are times when I need to make global changes and manage to consistency globally. I need tools that are going to let me do this. And they need the flexibility to understand all of the different unique sites that I want to create, and yet prevent me from creating snowflakes all over my hybrid network. So excited to announce Multi-Cloud Director that brings together operations for exactly this case, whether it's multiple sites on premise, multiple sites in cloud, some combination of the two, whether it's only analytics and legacy networking, whether it's only big cloud fabric and advanced VPCs, or whether it's a combination of the two. The design challenge around Multi-Cloud Director was a very, very high one, given the amount of use cases that it spans, and I'm so excited about where it's at today. So let's just recap our announcements. We're announcing on-prem VPCs. This will come out in the next major release of Big Cloud Fabric. Consistent with Amazon, delegate control, it simplifies automation. I strongly urge you, we'll be putting these up on labs.bigswitch.com very shortly, as soon as the product goes into beta, and I'm so excited about this. I cannot wait for everybody on the call to try this, and please tell us what you think. We're announcing BCF public cloud and BMF public cloud. Consistent tool chains for VPCs anywhere. Consistent tool chains for packet and flow analytics anywhere. We're incredibly excited about the impact that these will bring to organizations that are running both on-prem and in cloud and doing that with one team. And last, announcing multi-cloud director, the capstone of our cloud-first networking portfolio. This is going to be an exciting one. So I want to wrap it up there. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to releasing both demo videos, releasing to labs.bigswitch.com for people who want to take a double click, releasing some of our technical white papers. I think that we're open for questions.
Great, thanks a lot, Kyle. So we have a couple questions coming in. One of them actually is, what actually is the definition of BCF and BMF? Acronym definitions 101.
BCF stands for Big Cloud Fabric, our switching fabric product that we launched 4 years ago this week. Big Monitoring Fabric is our monitoring fabric product. Now, both of these are controllers and switch software that runs on switches from Dell, from HP, or from Whitebox. The Big Cloud Fabric, think of Big Cloud Fabric as a data center switching fabric. Think of Big Monitoring Fabric as a network packet broker fabric. That's how they started life. Now you can see the big evolutions that they're taking with Big Cloud Fabric now supporting VPCs on-premise, Big Cloud Fabric reporting it up to Amazon to support consistent management of VPCs there, Big Monitoring Fabric starting life as an NPB, adding service nodes, then adding analytics nodes, adding packet recorder functionality on-prem, and now unveiling the equivalent of all of these up into the cloud. So these are our two core product families, BCF and BMF.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So this one actually is on the other end of the spectrum in terms of advanced questions. Can multi-cloud director take a problem identified within Big Monitoring Fabric and action that towards Big Cloud Fabric, i.e. black hole a traffic flow?
We actually just showed a couple of demos a few weeks ago. Give us a little bit of time, and I think we should take the action to make a public version of the demo of exactly that.
Great, and then another question here. What is the pricing model that Big Switch handles? How do you guys price?
Sure, so for controllers and nodes, we do sell them as software or we sell them as hardware appliances. And when we sell them as hardware appliances, it's just like buying, let's say, any other network hardware appliance. They connect to open networking switches. And the software running on those open networking switches, we specifically price those as software subscriptions. It's our move into what we think is sort of the more modern pricing model across the industry. And it's also a way to say, hey, you don't need to, we thought very carefully about the promise that we want to make when the burden of proof is on us to perform. Happy to follow up on that particular topic about the price, about how we thought about the promises that we could make and how we reflected that in our pricing strategy.
Great. One other question here. It looks like there was a rumor last week about AWS entering into the switching market. Can you comment?
This is when we work very, very closely with the major private clouds, as you can probably tell. It is our hypothesis that there may possibly be a direct connect appliance based on white box switching hardware. We frankly think that this would be a fantastic part of the Amazon portfolio. A physical direct connect appliance would do for the Amazon networking kind of what Snowball and Snowmobile did for storage. We actually think it's a great idea. If and when something like this would launch, we would connect to it with our controllers and use the APIs on the box the exact same way that we use the Amazon APIs in the cloud. This would be, we think, a fantastic addition, and we'd be pretty excited to get our controllers connected to it.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like that's it for Q&A. We appreciate everybody joining us today. As Kyle mentioned, we have an online experience, which is the Big Switch Labs, which you can find at labs.bigswitch.com. We have over 10 modules with actual Ravello instances where you can get your hands dirty, self-paced labs, get a sense for this very modern UI that we have, as well as a very powerful CLI. We have an API-first architecture. Get a sense of this tenant-first, VPC everywhere type architecture. We also have a community edition, which is a free version, which if you want to load that onto your on-site lab, you can download that from the website as well. We have a series of webinars that we invite you to explore, as well as online demonstrations and a whole resources tab, as well as a freshly launched customer page that talks in detail about how customers like you are deploying this technology at scale in production across hyper-converged use cases, container networking, as well as VMware environments. And so we invite you to roll up your sleeves, do a little bit more investigation. It's a very rich website, and once you've done that exploration, feel free to contact some of the best SEs that we have in the networking profession, and we can get things started for a POC. Thanks so much for your time, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.